June 6th, 1944. The world's attention is fixed on the beaches of Normandy. The largest amphibious assault in history is underway. On that fateful day, over 150,000 Allied soldiers would storm the beaches to liberate Nazi-occupied France.
But what if I told you that just hours before the landings, another force, small but highly trained, had already landed behind their lines? They weren't part of the main invasion force. They didn't land on the beaches at all. Instead, these men were about to do something far more shocking, deep behind enemy lines.
These were the British Commandos, elite soldiers tasked with one of the most daring operations of World War II. Their mission? To infiltrate the heavily fortified Nazi defenses, sow chaos, and buy precious time for the invasion force. As 13,348 American paratroopers descended onto Normandy's beaches, the Commandos had already set the stage for the chaos to follow. But their journey, their courage, and the shocking way they would strike the Germans has been largely forgotten. The British Commandos were born out of desperation. In 1940, Britain was fighting for its very survival. The Nazi war machine had swept across Europe, and Britain stood alone, facing the full might of the Third Reich. To face this threat, Winston Churchill realized that Britain needed a force that could fight in unconventional ways, a force that could strike quickly, hard, and with precision. The British Commandos were the answer. Churchill's vision gave birth to the Commandos, an elite force forged in the fires of necessity. Their motto? With the blade and the bullet, we are the spearhead. Their job? To perform daring raids, sabotage missions, and inflict maximum damage on the enemy. The Commandos' first significant tests came in 1941, with a series of raids on German-occupied Norway. While the missions were often risky and poorly executed, they provided the Commandos with invaluable experience in covert operations. Raiding German positions in the dead of night, often under fire, the Commandos developed their lethal skills. Stealth, precision, and the ability to disappear before the enemy could react became their trademarks. The raids may have been a gamble, but they proved something vital. These soldiers were capable of doing what seemed impossible. As the war progressed, the need for these specialized forces became even clearer. By 1943, the Allies were preparing for the eventual invasion of Europe, D-Day, and the demand for more trained, elite soldiers intensified. Churchill, ever the visionary, ordered the creation of new commando units that would focus not just on raids, but on long-term sabotage, disruption, and covert operations behind enemy lines, crucial to the success of D-Day. As the Allies planned for D-Day, they realized that simply landing on the beaches wouldn't be enough. They needed to disrupt the German defenses behind the lines, slow down reinforcements, and keep the Nazis guessing. And this is where the British Commandos came in. Their mission was to parachute into Normandy under the cover of darkness, striking key targets that would cripple German communications, disrupt supply lines, and delay any counterattacks. Operation Overlord was the largest military invasion in history. But behind the scenes, the Commandos were given the critical job of clearing the path for the rest of the invasion forces. The British Commandos were unlike any other military force. Their training was brutal and specialized. They learned to move silently through enemy territory, using everything from knives to explosives. From parachuting to unarmed combat, their skills were honed for one purpose: to perform their mission with precision and speed. No room for failure, only success. Choosing the right men for this high-risk mission was critical. Only the best of the best were selected. Over 3,500 commandos would be parachuted into Normandy to carry out the mission. Men who had already proven themselves in battle were chosen for this operation. These were soldiers who had fought in North Africa, Italy, and Norway. It wasn't just about strength. It was about mental toughness, cunning, and the ability to adapt under the most extreme conditions. The night before D-Day, the Commandos were ready. The tension was palpable. They knew their mission was a dangerous one, but they also knew the stakes. The success of the entire invasion rested, in part, on their ability to disrupt the Germans. With only a few hours left before they would parachute into enemy territory, the soldiers were calm but focused. This wasn't just another raid. This was D-Day. On the night of June 5, 1944, the Commandos boarded their aircraft. The planes flew silently, the men preparing for what could be their final mission. And then, at 00:30, they jumped. The landing was chaotic. The men were scattered across the region, with many landing miles from their intended targets. Some were separated from their units, but their mission had to continue. They couldn't afford to fail. Minutes after landing, the Commandos were already engaged in combat. German patrols scoured the countryside, unaware that elite British soldiers had already landed behind their lines. The Commandos were trained to operate silently, swiftly. Their ability to eliminate small groups of German troops before they could raise the alarm was critical to the success of their mission. The Commandos wasted no time in starting their sabotage operations. One of their first objectives was the destruction of vital German supply lines. They targeted railways, bridges, and roadways, anything that could delay the German response. These small-scale acts of sabotage were the first cracks in the German defense. But they were just the beginning. As the commandos continued their attacks, the German response was swift. Reinforcements were called in, and the Germans began to realize that their defenses were being undermined. Despite the growing German presence, the commandos continued to hit hard and fade into the night. They had mastered the art of disappearing before the enemy could mount a significant counterattack. The commandos had specific objectives. They were to destroy key communication centers, disable supply lines, and ambush German reinforcements. Every mission was a carefully calculated strike at the heart of the German war effort. These men weren't just fighting to win. They were fighting to break the Germans' will to resist, and they succeeded. As the D-Day invasion continued on the beaches, the impact of the commandos' operations was already being felt. German troops were disoriented, reinforcements were delayed, and the German command was in chaos. While the world focused on the fierce fighting on the beaches, it was the actions of the British Commandos behind the lines that ensured the Allies' success. As the invasion pushed inland, the British Commandos fought alongside American and Canadian forces. Their mission was far from over. They continued to disrupt German communications and provide key intelligence. With the beachhead secured and the German defenses crumbling, the commandos' mission was deemed a success. By the time the dust settled, the British Commandos had completed their mission with precision. Key German positions had been neutralized, communication lines were severed, and Nazi reinforcements were delayed. The Allies had a foothold in Europe, and the rest of the war was about to change. Though their actions on D-Day were overshadowed by the larger battle on the beaches, the legacy of the British Commandos endures to this day. Their bravery, skill, and selflessness in the face of danger forever changed the course of history. As the British Commandos wreaked havoc behind the German lines, the psychological impact on the Nazis was undeniable. The Germans, already stretched thin with defending the beaches, were suddenly forced to contend with invisible enemies, soldiers who could strike without warning and disappear into the night. German forces were accustomed to fighting conventional battles, but the commandos' guerrilla warfare tactics turned the tide in a psychological war. Fear and confusion spread through German high command as they scrambled to understand how their defenses were being breached. While their mission was one of destruction, the commandos didn't just fight the Germans. They also helped the French people. In the small villages where they dropped, they provided aid to the locals, offered protection, and even passed on critical intelligence to the advancing Allied forces. For many French civilians, the Commandos were a symbol of hope in their darkest hour. These elite soldiers not only liberated towns, but also instilled a sense of purpose and a belief in the eventual defeat of the Nazis.
Though the British Commandos were all male, the role of women during D-Day cannot be overlooked. Behind the scenes, women served as intelligence officers, code breakers, and logistical support for the operation. Without their contributions, D-Day would not have been possible.
These unsung heroines helped to ensure that vital information about German movements was intercepted, and that the Commandos had the necessary support for their operations. After D-Day, the British Commandos continued their operations behind enemy lines as the Allies pushed forward. Their successful mission on D-Day marked a new phase in the war, one where unconventional warfare would be a crucial component in the fight against Nazi Germany. The legacy of the Commandos' success in Normandy lives on in the training of modern special forces. From the SAS to the U.S. Navy SEALs, the lessons learned from the D-Day Commandos are still applied today. To honor their incredible bravery, a memorial was erected in Scotland at Spion Bridge, where many of the Commandos trained. The memorial stands as a testament to their courage, skill, and sacrifice. Each year, veterans, their families, and tourists come to pay tribute to the Commandos who gave their lives in the fight for freedom. We knew the risks. We knew what we were getting into, but the mission had to succeed. And no matter how tough it got, we kept moving forward, because we knew the entire world was depending on us. Each commando had their own story to tell, a story of courage, hardship, and comradeship. Through their shared experiences, they became a close-knit family, bound together by the weight of their mission and the sacrifices they made. The success of D-Day and the Commandos' crucial role in its success marked a turning point in the war in Europe. The German defenses had been severely weakened by the Commandos' actions, giving the Allies the advantage they needed to push deeper into Nazi-occupied France. The Allied forces continued to advance through France, liberating cities one by one. The Commandos' success behind the lines had ensured that the Germans could not mount an effective counterattack. Their sabotage missions had caused chaos, and the tide of the war began to turn in favor of the Allies. Behind enemy lines, the British Commandos weren't alone. They worked closely with the French resistance, who provided valuable intelligence, safe houses, and crucial support during the operation. The collaboration between these two groups would play a vital role in the success of the Allied invasion. Together, they created a network of disruption that kept the Germans guessing, forcing them to divide their forces and defend multiple points at once. Even after the success of D-Day, the British Commandos didn't rest. They continued their operations behind German lines, striking targets deep within enemy territory. Their mission was far from over. They were tasked with ensuring that the Allies maintained their momentum and that German forces couldn't regroup.
From sabotage to intelligence gathering, the Commandos remained a critical part of the Allied war effort, even as the war moved towards its final stages. The bravery and audacity of the British Commandos did not go unnoticed. Over the years, their stories have been told in books, documentaries, and films. These men, who fought so hard and risked everything, became symbols of courage and dedication. Their legacy has inspired generations of soldiers, filmmakers, and civilians. From novels to blockbuster films, their story continues to resonate today. The British Commandos were the predecessors to modern special forces, such as the Special Air Service (SAS) and similar elite units around the world. Today's special forces operate with many of the same skills, tactics, and precision that the Commandos pioneered during World War II. Without the success of the Commandos on D-Day, the special forces of today might not exist in the form they do now. Their methods of covert operations, sabotage, and unconventional warfare laid the groundwork for modern military tactics. The Commandos gave their all for freedom. Many of them never returned from their missions. Today, we remember them, not just for their heroism, but for the sacrifices they made to secure a free world. These brave men fought not for fame, but for a cause greater than themselves. Their legacy is a reminder that true heroism is found in those who fight for others without expecting anything in return. As we look back on the events of D-Day, let us not forget the men who operated in the shadows, those who made the impossible possible. The British Commandos were the unsung heroes of D-Day, and their actions were vital to the success of the invasion. They struck hard, they struck fast, and they made history. May we remember them not just as soldiers, but as the legends who changed the course of history. For freedom, for justice, and for peace.